Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Animas Corporation, providing insulin delivery products for people living with diabetes and part of the One Touch family. And by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes with the world's first continuous glucose monitoring system that sends glucose readings directly to your compatible smart device. Live life on your own terms with Dexcom. Hey, it's Stacey. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, a big win for the second time in Daytona. NASCAR Xfinity driver Ryan Reed also marks 6 years living with Type 1.
You know, when I look at racing and when I look at myself as a whole, I want people to see me as a race car driver or as a triathlete or whatever it is that I'm doing at that moment, not as someone with diabetes that, oh, by the way, drives a race car.
We'll talk about the race, the wrecks, handling highs and lows in a race car, and just what was his blood sugar after that big win? Yeah, I asked. It all starts now on Diabetes Connections. Welcome to Diabetes Connections. I'm Stacey Sims. This is a bonus episode of Diabetes Connections. If this is your first time listening, we aim to educate and inspire about type 1 diabetes by sharing stories of connection with people who are extremely high profile in our community, like Ryan Reed, as well as talking to the technology companies, healthcare companies, people making news in our community, and people just living day to day with type 1 diabetes. My son was diagnosed right before he turned 2, a little over 10 years ago, and my background is in broadcasting. I've been local radio and TV anchor and host for many years. Put them together, and that's how you come up with the podcast. I was very fortunate to have the chance to talk to Ryan Reed shortly after he won at Daytona International Speedway. He is in the NASCAR Xfinity circuit, and this was his second Xfinity win of his career. They both happened at Daytona. Ryan races for Roush Fenway, and he drives the Lilly diabetes car. So we're going to talk more about what that means, Lilly's involvement, not just with Ryan, but with NASCAR in general. And we also talk about type 1 diabetes. Of course, he is marking 6 years with type 1. He was diagnosed and told that he was diagnosed right as he was moving from the West Coast to the Charlotte area, which is, NASCAR country, big time NASCAR teams, very close to the city. And he was told that he wouldn't be able to race again at diagnosis. So he very wisely fired that doctor, found someone who would help him secure his dreams, and you can hear much more of that story. We talked in depth last year as he marked 5 years with type 1, and he tells more of the story about being diagnosed right on the cusp of starting a new part of his career. He's been racing since he was a little kid, moving to the East Coast, moving away from family, how he did it, and what he hoped to accomplish in the years to come. So that episode I'll link up at diabetes-connections.com, or you can search it up. It's funny, it's just about 1 year from right now, 1 year ago that I talked to him. I'm very fortunate. I live about 20 minutes from the Roush Fenway headquarters in Concord and from Charlotte Motor Speedway. So very easy to head on over there and sit down with Ryan for a conversation. I was able to ask some of the questions that listeners had as well. We had a little bit less than 25 minutes as Ryan is extremely busy running from one meeting to the next. So here's my talk with Ryan Reed. So congratulations. What a way to start. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was an awesome start, I think. It's a long off season. At least it seems like a long time to us, 3 months away from the racetrack, and you want to get out there and you want to make a statement early on, and so be able to go out there and win like that is huge for confidence, momentum, and just to knock the rust off like that's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun to find out about. I mean, we last talked almost exactly a year ago when you were marking 5 years with type 1, and I want to talk about type 1. I want to talk about your journey through all of this. But in Daytona, let's just talk about that race for a minute. And remember, a lot of people listening probably know about NASCAR, maybe from Lightning McQueen or maybe Days of Thunder. But, when you're in a race like that with wrecks and everything's going crazy around you, how do you stay focused?
I think just kind of part of our job, I think after a while it just becomes part of what you do, and things are going wrong, it's important as a race car driver to stay calm and, just kind of reel yourself back in, even if you get a little excited, and remember that you have a job to do. I think we got wrecked twice, and it's kind of like, dealing with something that goes wrong at work. You don't get, at least I think that the better you can handle it, the more calm you can stay, the better you're going to be. And so it's just about relaying information to my crew, tell them what we needed to fix, and the more time they have to prepare, before I get to pit road, you're only talking about a couple minutes, but the difference in a couple minutes can be the difference between winning or losing a race. So just stay calm, tell them what they need to know, and, try and get back out there and give ourselves a shot. So I think that was definitely kind of one of those never give up races. Just feel like as long as we were still in it, as long as we were still there at the end of it, we're going to give ourselves a shot, and that's what we did, and so it was really cool.
What happens when you wreck? Do you have any thought during, or is it mostly after? I mean, you've been doing this for so long. Like you said, it's just a bad day at work. But or a tough time at work. Does it register when it happens, or are you just thinking, all right, here's how to correct it and move on?
Yeah, I think you're just assessing it, you know what I mean? Like, it's all, just second nature at that point, just kind of muscle memory kicks in, and you're kind of thoughtless as far as what's going on. You don't have an emotion towards it. You're just dealing with it. And so, I mean, it all happens so fast. So you just, get through it, and then once you get through it the best way that you can, sometimes that means the best you can do is a wreck and you're done. You're wrecked and you can't continue. And so you just go on and load up and go to the next race. And other times you can, avoid catastrophe and get through it to where you can still continue on in the race, and that's what happened to us at Daytona. We were wrecked. We had some damage, but not enough to keep us out of the race, and really not enough to hurt the performance of our car. And so I think those are the ones where you thank God that you made it through, and you got a little lucky or whatever. You did a good job as a driver to keep the thing straight, and try and give yourself another chance at it. Even if you have to go to the back of the pack, so to speak, you start at the end of the field, got a lot of race cars to pass. At least you still have a shot.
I was reading that in the last year, some things were said on social media, in the industry. It's been a while since you won. And you won at the same track, which is great. But what was going through your head when you did win? Did you think only about that victory, or were you kind of thinking in the back of your mind, like, showed you, there you go?
No, I mean, I think for me, it's never been, to me, what was more of a, I guess solidified in my mind, look, I belong here, was the end of last year. Daytona's Daytona, and we've always shown speed there and shown that, I can race at restrict plate races, and, we can win at them. But at the end of last year, we ran well at a lot of different types of racetracks, and finished up 6th in points. We made a strong run at the championship, and I honestly feel like we were a contender. We went to Phoenix the second to last race of the year, qualified 3rd, and ended up 6th, and just, against some really, really tough guys, a lot of Cup guys, beat some Cup guys. And so just, I think, it's easy to get caught up, especially in this day and age with Twitter and Instagram. And as an athlete, people probably don't think about all that much, but, we read it. We read Twitter, and we're up to speed on what people think of us. And some drivers just choose to ignore it and not even look at it. I read it, and, it's just part of, I read Twitter. There's as many bad things as there is good things. There's a lot of people that are encouraging, and there's a lot of people that have negative things to say. And so for me, it's just about put my blinders on, stay focused. I know what I'm doing. I know how much work I'm putting in. I know that I have the best team around me, and so I just try to kind of block out with the people that don't have positive things to say and surround myself with my family and other fans who, try to build me up rather than tear me down.
That's great. And your family is in this area now, right? You guys are all from California, but did your parents?
No, it's just me out here. My parents still live out in California,
okay.
So but I still see them quite a bit. They go to a lot of races or come visit me every once in a while. My mom was in town last week hanging out. So I have a very strong relationship with my parents. They've been huge supporters of mine throughout my whole career and not just my career, but my personal life as well. But so I have awesome parents and definitely owe a lot to them. I
talked to your mom for Mother's Day last year for the podcast. I thought for some reason she was in Lake Norman area, so I apologize for that. She said very nice things. So let's talk about Type 1. You were told at diagnosis you'd probably never race again. You kind of fired that doctor, luckily for you
Yeah.
and for the rest of us who are fans now. But how are you doing? I mean, you're marking 6 years with Type 1 now, too.
Yeah, I don't know. I think how are you doing with Type 1 is always an interesting question because it's still type 1 diabetes, and it's still, a very demanding and difficult disease or, challenge in your life to deal with. But, I definitely don't feel like it holds me back in any way. I ran my first triathlon at the end of last year, which was huge for me. Obviously, getting in the race car every weekend is my dream and my passion. But I really try to, do a lot more with my life than just drive race cars. I think when I was diagnosed, racing was my life, through and through. There was nothing else that mattered to me. And, really it's all I did. I just, lived to be at the racetrack. And since I was diagnosed, I kind of tried to, definitely racing was still my passion. And obviously, a lot of people have heard my story, heard me talk about being told to never race again. And that's, how devastating it was. And the only thing I cared about was getting back into a race car. But also, too, it kind of made me wake up and realize that, I want to live a very full life. Diabetes can, I think a lot of times rob people of that, and especially if they aren't fortunate enough to find a doctor who encourages them to chase their dreams. And so for me, it was about doing a lot more than just driving race cars. Go out there, and if triathlon is something that I really wanted to do, so I trained really hard and did it, and it was a huge check mark and a goal that was not easy, but very important for me to complete.
Were you a swimmer, biker, runner, any of that before you started training for the triathlon?
I loved to bike. Cycling was something that early on in my race, after being diagnosed and started to take the diet and exercise side of things more seriously, mainly because of diabetes, but also too to be a better athlete inside the race car. Cycling was something I picked up early on, and I felt like it was a great way to train. And then cycling led to just kind of, being introduced into the world of triathlons. And there's a lot of drivers who are very into that. And so I wanted to run Jimmy Johnson, who, if you're a NASCAR fan, you know who Jimmy Johnson is. But he has a big charity triathlon, and it's a sprint triathlon. So it's relatively short. It's a 3-mile run, I forget, a 500-meter swim, and a 12-mile bike ride. I forget exactly how long it takes, but I wanted to do it, and I was not a biker, or I was not a swimmer or a runner. I biked a lot, but so I started training to run, and my goal was to be able to complete that, and I completed that, and then I wanted to be able to run a half marathon, and so just to say I did it, and so did that, and then one thing led to another, and decided to train for an Olympic distance triathlon at the end of last year, and did it, and it was really hard. I think that I don't know that it was harder than getting in a race car with diabetes, but it was definitely a lot of different set of challenges. So worked really hard at that, and the diabetes management side of things has definitely threw me a lot of curveballs, but also I feel like it helped me a lot to understand more about diabetes management.
Well, that's interesting, because it would be a different set of parameters for the race car than for the other kinds of activity. Can you give us maybe an example of, is it more the endurance stuff, or not? I shouldn't say endurance, because you do that in a race car too. But just the different muscles and everything you're using.
Yeah, I think the swimming was definitely the most. Fortunately, the swimming's first, so there's no way to monitor my blood sugar while I'm swimming. There's just we can't have a Dexcom in the water. There's just so many different things that I'm limited to how to. But once I got on the bike, I have my Dexcom ready to go, and I can start watching my blood sugar a lot like how I watch it inside the race car, but probably a little closer, just because I'm able to watch it closer. And then I think I don't know which one is more demanding. I think more muscle fatigue wise, the triathlon is, but my heart rate is actually just as high during a race than it is my triathlon. So both are physically demanding. I probably take in more calories during a triathlon just to sustain that energy because you're getting more fatigue, in various areas of your muscles. But I definitely had to take in a lot of carbohydrates throughout that to keep my blood sugar up. I think that my blood sugar just ran lower during the triathlon than it does in a race car.
Let's talk about in the race car, because you use a Dexcom. I saw recently, and correct me if I'm wrong, that NASCAR is allowing some fitness information to be sent to teams or monitored in the cars in a different way, heart rate, that sort of thing. When we last talked, I think you had said that they would not let you share your CGM information with your crew. Is that still the case?
Well, it's not necessarily they won't let me share. It's just that you have to have a cell phone inside the car in order to do so. And you're still not allowed to have a cell phone in the car. So there's still no way to transmit. The biggest thing is they don't want anything transmitting a signal outside of the race car, which even with a wearable device, so I actually wear my smartwatch, and it's connected to a heart rate monitor, so I can see exactly what my heart rate and stuff is doing throughout the race. which is actually really good information for me. Not just as an athlete, so I can see where I need to train or whatever, just good information to have, but also someone with diabetes to see what kind of heart rate I have throughout it, to see how many calories I'm burning and whatnot. But yeah, so there's still no way to transmit a signal outside of the car that what NASCAR is comfortable with, to where you can't take advantage of that for a performance advantage. But I still feel really comfortable with my diabetes management. I watch it myself, and I don't. There's no guesswork to it. I feel very comfortable with it. Yeah, certainly. If someone else could watch it for me, that'd be a little bit of a burden lifted. But for the most part, I don't feel any disadvantage by having to watch my blood sugar.
Do you communicate it to your team, or do you just kind of look at it yourself and take care of it?
Yeah, no. I just kind of watch it myself. If I was in a position to where my pit crew has to give me an insulin shot during the race, then obviously I'd communicate that to them. But other than that, it's just really for me. I want my crew chief to focus on his job. I think, when I look at racing and when I look at myself as a whole, I want people to see me as a race car driver or as a triathlete or whatever it is that I'm doing at that moment, not as someone with diabetes that, oh, by the way, drives a race car. And so I think for me, I want everyone to focus on their job, and if my crew chief, I want him to be the best crew chief he can be, my engineer to be the best engineer he can be, and so on and so forth. And just like me, I want to be the best race car driver I can be, not with diabetes. I just want to be the best race car driver I can be, and diabetes has nothing to do with it. And so I try to take out all those variables that I can and leave no excuses. And so part of that is I just manage my diabetes, and I work really hard at it during the week and at the racetrack, and have a great relationship with my doctor to where I feel like I can go to the racetrack and not let it affect my performance at all.
I had a couple of questions from my listeners, and you mentioned if your crew has to give you insulin. The question came up, do you have that patch on your leg? Is that how they know to give you insulin, or what is that? Can you talk about why that's there and if the crew has ever had to do that?
Yeah, it's just to indicate where to give me the injection. It's not necessarily, so all that is to indicate where, just kind of give them a target, because obviously...
Is it a different material? I'm sorry to ask a dumb question.
It's a little bit thinner right there, yeah. But, I think, if I was a crew guy and I was going over the wall to give someone a shot, I wouldn't want any guesswork. I wouldn't want to have to think about it when I got that. I want to just know exactly where to do it. We've practiced it, but we've never had to do it in race conditions. It is a safety net. It's not something I plan on having to do. It's not like something I work into my regiment. Halfway through the race, I'm going to get an insulin shot or something like that. It's just, if I have to have it, then we can do it. But we've never had to do it, thankfully, and don't intend on having to do it anytime soon.
Another listener asked if you had ever gone low during a race, and if so, what had you done? I don't fight lows all that much. With adrenaline and dehydration, I've talked to a lot of people that play sports, and it seems like they all typically will fight similar thing. My blood sugar goes up, it's 100, on a hot day, it's 140, 150 degrees inside the car, so we're losing a lot of water. With dehydration, my blood sugar goes up, and then also with adrenaline, so it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I get adrenaline up there, I see a blood sugar spike along with that. And so really what it is about controlling my blood sugar and as it goes higher. So, what kind of carbs I eat. So it's important for me to eat more of a slow digestive carb, something that doesn't spike my blood sugar, but I still need to carb load so I still have energy. So I've played around with a lot of different types of carbohydrates, and obviously a protein to go along with that, to sustain a steady climb instead of just, like I said, that initial spike and then, it going up or down. You don't have to answer this, but do you eat the same thing before the races? What works for you? Can you be specific?
Yeah, chicken and brown rice is like my go-to. That's my, what I feel the most comfortable with. Sometimes, change it up. I think if that one day have, steak, But for me, or fish, something like that. Just a lean protein is important to me. And then I prefer, grains other than wheat. I'd prefer a brown rice or something like that. I'm not by no means gluten-free or anything like that, but I feel better without gluten.
Another question from a listener was, are you still doing shots and not using the insulin pump? And either way, would you consider one of the hybrid closed-loop systems that is due to come out?
I think that for me right now, the issue is the temperature inside the car and keeping insulin on board. Talked about it earlier, 140, 150 degrees. You're supposed to keep insulin at a much cooler temperature than that. And so I am still on shots, and that's the reason why. And I definitely am always open to newer technology. Newer technology is what allows me to get in a race car. And if we can come up with a way, if there's a way to show that insulin's sustainable at that temperature, or some way to control the temperature of the insulin while it's inside the race car, then yeah, I think that that's ultimately where the future of my management is. But right now, I do have success managing it while inside the race car, and so it's not that I'm stuck in that. I definitely don't want to get in a position to where I don't look at new technology because of that. If there's a better way to do it, there's a better way to do it. But however, it's when I get in the race car, I got to be very confident about what I have, because for a lot of reasons. One, the safety of myself, safety of others, but also because I want to be able to go try and win that race, and I don't want diabetes to take me out of it.
In the wake of your win, not because of it, I'm sure, but shortly thereafter, Lilly announced a new agreement with NASCAR. They're the diabetes health partner. You have represented them for a couple of years now. Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like for you? I've seen you meet and greet so many people. There's a lot of kids in this area with type 1 who you've met. Is it still fun for you? Do you still feel motivated by that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's probably the coolest part of my job, so to speak. I think over the years, I've obviously been driving a race car. I'm extremely passionate about it, but one thing that hasn't changed for me at all, or if anything, I've become more passionate about it, is the awareness side of things. It's a responsibility, or not, I don't know, it's an opportunity, I guess, that I'm very grateful for. It's not something that I ever anticipated, being able to be a role model, so to speak. I think when people ask me if I think of myself as a role model, it's a kind of a weird question to answer, but if I do have the opportunity, if someone does look at me as a role model, I take it very seriously, and I think that it's a wonderful opportunity to have if you ever do get that as a human, and so I love the opportunities that I get through that, and continue to work very closely with Lilly, and really it's just awesome that Lilly allows me to do that and use the racing as a platform to talk about it, versus just as a traditional sponsor, just talk about what that sponsor is. I get to talk about diabetes and why I'm so passionate about it, and Lily's passionate about it. You see it obviously with the partnership with me and allowing me to talk about it, but also their expanded role with NASCAR.
That's great. All right, I know you got to go. One last quick question. The pictures when you won in Daytona this year were amazing. You're standing on the car, the champagne's popping, everybody's going bananas. What were you thinking? Do you have any coherent thoughts at that point, or is it just a sense of accomplishment?
I think it's just you're just completely just euphoric. You're so happy. It's not it's what I work for day in and day out. And winning you got to think, if you look at a football or basketball or most traditional sports, it's if you have 80 games playing, there's 80 winners. So with racing, if there's 36 races, there's only 36 winners and 40 teams at every single one of those races. So you have a lot. The point is you have a lot more days where you lose than win. And so when you do win in this sport, it's a big deal. And so it's something that those moments, when you see those pictures and when you see how happy I am when I get out of the race car, those are what keep me motivated and carry me to the next win. Because without those days, this sport can be mentally tough and really beat you down. So just try to hold on to those and cherish those, and really appreciate them when they come.
Did you look at your Dexcom during all those celebrations? Were you high? Were you low? Was it going crazy?
My blood sugar was definitely really high after the race, and just tons of adrenaline. And then shortly thereafter, about the media time, I started to crash, just typical, once adrenaline wears off. And I start to get some water in me, my blood sugar's crashing, so got to go eat. And, I, definitely didn't mind having a cheat meal after that one. It was whatever I wanted to eat, I ate.
That's great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
Much more information at diabetes-connections.com. And we mentioned very briefly that Lilly Diabetes is expanding its role with NASCAR. So let me tell you a little bit more about that. They are going to be the official diabetes health partner of NASCAR, which means like health and wellness initiatives, and they'll have some space on NASCAR.com. They started sponsoring Ryan back in 2013. And a lot of events now have this Lilly tent, or the American Diabetes Association is often there as well, and they will talk to people who go to the races about diabetes, type 1, type 2, and educate it's a chance for people to learn more about how to manage, to learn what's available to them. And I've seen Ryan at these things. We've been fortunate enough to go to many of these events. My kids have met Ryan a couple of times. And I've seen him interact with people in a way, and he talks about it in these interviews. It's genuine. He really takes his time, talks to kids with type 1, talks to adults with type 1 and type 2. And it seems to be really important to him. He's definitely not just talking about it. He's definitely doing it. And it's funny, we have known him, we met him for the first time right after he was diagnosed. It's got to be 5.5 years ago when he came to a Charlotte event. And it was just so much fun for all the kids to meet this guy who wasn't yet a NASCAR driver. He had just moved here, and he's the same person. I'm an old lady, but he looks the same to me. He looks like this kid. And look at what's happened. So it's just terrific that he's just as genuine and open as he was when we first met him. So I hope to continue talking to Ryan. Thrilled that they reached out and offered this interview. And I hope you've enjoyed it. By the way, if you're new to the program, and you're listening on Facebook or on the website, please share it with somebody who's touched by type 1. If you're listening on a podcast app like iTunes or Stitcher, go ahead and subscribe. Really appreciate that. And that way you will get the new episode ASAP as soon as it is released. You won't have to wait for it or search online. It'll just show up on your phone. And sign up for the newsletter. That's at diabetes-connections.com. It'll pop up, or you can find it on our Facebook page. And the newsletter, every week I will share the new episode as well as the link of the week, which is information about something that's better read than heard on a podcast. There's just some stuff that you want to read or look at, or videos, and I like to send that out, and that's exclusive to the newsletter. Of course, I don't sell your email or any nonsense like that. It's just you and me. And we'll keep it that way. So again, this was a bonus episode of Diabetes Connections. I hope you come back week after week for the regularly scheduled program. I usually release new episodes on Tuesday, very early in the morning. So when you wake up on Tuesday, there will be a new episode. So I hope you come back and listen to that. I'm Stacey Sims, and I'll see you back here on Tuesday.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.